Well, big one this week, Tropic Thunder, $90 million NARM movie action spoof, which I think it's taken 120 in America already, so by their sums it probably it's earned its payback. Directed by and starring Ben Stiller, with a script which has in its credits Ethan Coen, so bar is set very high. The story opens with Steve Coogan, our very own Steve Coogan, as a British director who is struggling to get the NARM movie Tropic Thunder, which is theoretically based on a true story, made. His problem is, on the one hand, he's got an abusive studio boss who thinks he's an idiot, studio boss played by Tom Cruise in odd, fat, bald, sweary mode, but still clearly Tom Cruise, and dealing with squabbling actors played by Stiller, who's playing Tug Speedman, who is effectively Zoolander as a dopey actor. Jack Black, who in his previous incarnations in this movie has starred in films like The Fatties. He's kind of like a Martin Lawrence clone. It's one of those things in which he plays all the parts. And then, and most controversially, Robert Downey Jr. as an Australian Oscar winner who has undergone, in inverted commas, pigment alteration and, at least according to the trailer, Ebonics voice training, although that line isn't in the film. I was listening for it and it isn't in the film itself. Meaning,
Ebonics?
Yeah,
he's
he's blacked
ebony?
up. Yeah, that's the joke. That joke is in the trailer, but it's not in the film itself. So, basically, Robert Downey Jr. playing an actor playing in blackface. All the actors are rubbish. The movie's going down the toilet. So Steve Coogan comes up with this idea. Steve Coogan's character comes up with this idea to make the movie work, which is he actually transports them off into the middle of the jungle and says, right, I'm going to leave you here and see what happens. Here's a clip.
We have rigged this entire Valley of Death with hidden cameras. And I will be shooting as well from unseen vantage points so that every glorious moment is captured on film. Believe me, gentlemen, it will be glorious. If it looks real, chances are it probably is. You wanted to be actors? You wanted to occupy the skin of another human being? Well, get ready to occupy the skin of a terrified US infantry grunt surrounded by death. There'll be ambushes, enemy fire, your own little personal slice of NARM. This radio goes to the chopper and the chopper only. The chopper is God, and I am Jesus Christ, his son. You are my chosen disciples. And no one gets to go home till we get the shots. Put on your war faces, gentlemen. Now, let's go and make the greatest war movie ever! Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
Aha! Sorry,
Yeah, aha would be the right response, except that's the end of Steve Coogan, because that's 15 minutes in, he steps on a landmine and he doesn't exist after that. So the deal is that the characters are then lost in the jungle and have to find them, and they can't figure out whether it's a movie or whether it's real. OK? That's it. Steve Coogan's role is just at the very beginning. Now, a few things to say. One of the things about the movie is that it raised a lot of eyebrows when it was being made, and indeed immediately after it was released, because it deliberately deals with subject matter that is, let us say, tricky. Most audaciously, the Robert Downey Jr. character. I mean, if you remember what happened when Spike Lee made Bamboozled, which was a pastiche about blackface, where two people go to a television studio and they're just trying to prove how racist the television studio are, so they suggest a blackface TV show, and the television studio love it, and it becomes a cult. And when the movie came out, and Spike Lee's credentials, I think, are fairly, well documented, people was accusing Spike Lee of being racist and using racist imagery. When Robert Downey Jr. was first offered this role, he apparently was really worried about it because he wanted to make absolutely sure that everybody understood that what he was doing was, satirising anybody who would think that, doing this was even vaguely respectable. And so to that effect, you've got always as his sidekick Brandon T. Jackson, who plays this rapper called Al Pacino, rapper turned actor Al Pacino, who keeps looking at the Downey Jr. character and going, I don't know what you're doing. It's really offensive. How dare you be doing all this stuff? There's also another issue, which is that the character which Ben Stiller plays made a movie before this, in the film within a film, called Simple Jack, in which he plays a character who's kind of Forrest Gumpy or a little bit Rain Man-y. And let me just read you what it says about this from the BBFC website. I'm quoting here from the British Board of Film Classification website. It says, the film is spoofing politically correct ideas. One of the actors within the film is shown to have once made a film as a mentally retarded man, and several spoof scenes from this film are shown. In addition, one of the principal actors is a white man who has, in inverted commas, blacked up for the role in the film within a film. The comic absurdities of these characters are played out to the full, but could be misconstrued as offensive. So even the BBFC, in classifying the movie, were aware that what was happening. They understood the joke, but they were also aware that the joke could be mistaken. And there was a lot of stuff about this in the press. Certain groups got upset about it. Ethan Cohen said specifically that as far as the scenes with Stiller were concerned, he said they weren't meant to derive humour from mental disability, but to satirise emotionally exploitative depictions of mental disability in movies such as Forrest Gump and Rain Man. Okay, so it's very clear, I think, exactly what the what the movie maker set out to do. It's also very clear that some people could take offence, but you'd be missing the point. That said, the biggest problem with Tropic Thunder is that with all this edgy stuff going on in it, it's nothing like as funny as it ought to be. I think all the best stuff is the stuff which is edgy, the stuff with Ben Stiller in those particular roles, the stuff with Robert Downey Jr. is this just ludicrous Antipodean actor who thinks that it's reasonable to, in inverted commas, get into character and become kind of some terrible Action Jackson parody. And he never breaks character. All the way through the movie, he is in this kind of ludicrous racial pastiche, which is completely unacceptable, and yet he can't see it. The problem is the rest of the movie is terribly baggy. Jack Black's character is just kind of there but not funny, and also not Jack Black. I don't know how well it manages to handle some of the I mean, there's an awful lot of sort of on-screen, violence and mucking around and action, but I don't know that actually sits nicely alongside the comedy as well as it should do. And I just got this sense of watching it thinking, I've been really looking forward to this. It sounds really edgy. It sounds really sort of like it's, it's doing something that's very, very odd for a mainstream Hollywood movie. It's cost $90 million, and yet it's not a belly laugh. There are several bits in it that are funny. There are several bits in it that are very, very baggy. And it's one of those weird films when the idea of it is much more enjoyable than the film itself. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm quite glad that they've done what they've done, but it is all over the place. And all the funniest bits, there's a bit at the very beginning in which you see the trailers of the movies that these guys have theoretically made before, and those short, pithy trailers are funnier than the rest of the film. And the scenes with Robert Downey Jr., who I used to have a real problem with, are the funniest thing in the film, but an awful lot of it is just padding. And I think the $90 million didn't help. I think if you give somebody $90 million, they just go, I think the best thing would have been if they'd said, you got $15 million, do it with that.
Sorry to try and interrupt on my programme, but is baggy the opposite of taut?
It's exactly the opposite of taut, yeah. And once again, it's a classic expression of that thing that what you really needed was a producer to go through it with a chainsaw. Go, no, lose Jack Black's character, that just doesn't work. Cut out that action sequence, you don't need that. Pull back on the budget, you don't need $90 million. It should have been made for a quarter of the money, and it would have been a lot edgier.